How's it going? It's David H. Lawrence, 17. Thank you so much for joining me today. We are simulcasting, as the kids say, on 3 different social media networks. We're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we're on YouTube, and I'd love to know where you've decided to join us. Where is your preferred seat located? Is it on YouTube? Is it on Facebook? Is it on LinkedIn? Where are you? Just in the comments below, wherever you are, let me know. I want to know what you're doing. Already, we've got people that are showing up and saying, "Oh, I'm on YouTube." Wait, hold on, one more. I'm on YouTube. And storyteller narrations. Who would that possibly be with that lovely face? Who would that be? This is. Oh, you're just keeping us in suspense, aren't you? There you go, Al Kessel. All right, thank you, Maria, Corey. Thank you for showing up. Appreciate it. Everybody, let me know. And I love that you're giving us your preferences in terms of hierarchy. Listen, we got a lot to do today, so I want to get to this. Also, if you have questions for our guest, if you already know who our guest is and you have questions for our guest, please feel free to start putting them in the comments below, because we've got a very limited amount of time. We got about an hour with Amy Jo, and we have we have some questions that I have for her, but I want you to also be involved. And there she is, Amy Jo. Thank you so much. Amy Jo Berman, how are you today?
I'm awesome. How are you?
I am great. Thank you for asking. More people showing up. YouTube. Who is LinkedIn, YouTube? Oh, a lot of YouTube. Almost everybody on YouTube. There we go. LinkedIn. All right, good. So thank you so much for that. I'm going to put up a link that I want you to be aware of in just a moment, because Amy Jo is prepping as we speak. You can see she's got all this workout gear in the background, prepping for this Thursday and Friday. As we do this stream, if you want to hit the like button, if you want to share it with your friends, let them know what we're doing to help you up-level your career. I'd love for that to be the case. And again, make sure that you ask your questions on our topic today in the comments below. That's how we're going to be able to know that you have questions and are interested in. I do want you to know about this particular link, voheroes.com/castability. Can't misspell it, Castability. And this is the Castability Factor that Amy Jo is going to be leading later this week, the training that she's going to be leading. And if you jot that down, if you go register for it, I've set aside some free tickets for everybody. Amy's been sharing them with me. It's easy to get in if you know a guy and you know a guy. But what this is all about is this business that we have going for ourselves as performers. And it doesn't matter whether you're an actor, acting on television and film, acting on stage, acting in commercials, if you're a voice talent, if you're an audiobook narrator, if you're doing commercials, you are going to present yourself. You're going to take your little suitcase and your bowler hat, and you're traveling around the countryside, and you're going to take your little suitcase and you're going to open it up and say, "Can I help you? Is there something I can do to serve you? Is there something I can solve for you? Is there a problem that you need help with in terms of casting somebody that can participate in your project?" Whatever it is, you're presenting yourself to a casting entity. In some cases, it's a very highly skilled casting director. In some cases, it's a client that's doing the casting on their own. It's amazing how much they notice. And one of the things that Amy Jo Berman has is experience in noticing stuff, noticing things that work and noticing things that don't work. Would that be a fair assessment, Amy Jo?
Yeah, I'd say that's very fair. Yeah. Yes.
You spent a lot of time at HBO working on very big projects.
I did.
And I imagine that the actors that showed up, most of the time it was in person in those days, right?
Mostly, but we did get our fair amount of tapes, because we would cast from many different markets. And but back then tapes were like either on a VHS or eventually on CDs and stuff, before we finally migrated over to the online platforms in my later years there.
Yeah, it's interesting because you read stories about people in the late 90s, early 2000s, even into the teens, who are like, yeah, I was living in Italy at the time and I just sent them a tape. I didn't even ask if I could audition. And now that's not uncommon. And most of the time it's generated by casting offices. But however your audition arrives, you go in person, you send in a self-tape, whatever it is, or you're doing a live on camera thing via Zoom or via one of the casting platforms. There are things that usually work, and there are things that usually don't work,
Mhm.
despite our best intentions as actors, because we all march to a different drummer. Um, when you saw actors doing certain things, what brought smiles to your face?
Well, that's a great question because there are certain things that when you watch auditions as a casting director, when you see actors do certain things, and I'll give you some examples in a second, you go, oh, what a pro. That's kind of like the conversation that happens between casting directors and the producers or the executives or whatever. It's like, oh my gosh, she's such a pro, they're such a pro. And it's like a very common thing to refer to somebody as, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the amount of credits you have or the amount of time you've been in the business or whatever, how much you booked. It's about knowing what casting directors expect of you and being able to deliver that. And when you get that casting director reaction of, oh, what a pro. And by the way, you're never going to hear that. That's an internal thing. That's when things can exponentially change in your acting career, because that's when you start to get brought in for things without a breakdown going out. And that's the sweet spot.
Yeah. I engaged in what is now illegal activity here in Los Angeles for years. I attended every casting workshop I could possibly schedule. I was
Ooh.
averaging 3 a week.
Mm-hmm.
I did 164 casting workshops in 1 year, and did so not because I hoped, oh, they'll call me in. Not at all. I wanted to see how the sausage was made. I didn't want to ask questions, what are your pet peeves? I didn't want to ask that. But what I wanted to know was, how does this business work? How does the process work? And, I'd do a scene and I'd get feedback. And you're absolutely right. When somebody would say, thank you for prepping. Thank you for being a pro. Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. Mostly because they'd been seeing some people in some of these workshops who weren't prepared and weren't ready to do anything in front of a casting director yet. That, like, I didn't care if they liked the scene or not. Just getting that what is it called? I'm having a senior moment. That
Feedback?
feedback, yeah, but positive feedback, that
Yeah.
that compliment that you are doing the work that's needed to be done.
But you know what's interesting about the whole, oh, they're such a pro thing is it's like two sides of a coin. The casting directors, when it comes to auditions, and I'm actually going to dive into this really deep on the Castability Factor training, but this is something that, that's really important for you to understand, for every actor to understand, that casting directors, when it comes to actors who audition, they think of you in just two ways. They think of you as either a pro or an amateur. It's like two sides of a coin. There is no amateur and a half or pro minus. You know what I mean? It's just one or the other. And it has nothing to do, again, with amount of time in the business or whatever. It's meeting their expectations. And so the important part of this is, if they look at your audition, whether it's a self-tape, an in-person, a Zoom, or whatever, and they're not like, oh, what a pro, then you know what they're saying in their mind. Oh my God, what an amateur. And you don't want that response. So what you need to know is what makes a casting director think of you as a pro versus an amateur, and then deliver those things. Because otherwise your auditions aren't going to get watched, or if they get watched, they're not going to get taken seriously, or you're going to be thinking you're delivering an audition that was good enough when it actually wasn't. And then you wonder why you didn't book. And that's so frustrating, right? And it doesn't have to be that way when you understand how casting directors think. You said something else before that I just wanted to mention, like when you go to casting workshops, and you did it the exact right way, the way that I always recommend you go for an educational experience and to learn, right? And not to go, oh, what's your pet peeve? But what's interesting is the pet peeves by themselves are meaningless, because they're about an individual casting director's very specific, quirky desires or things that they like or don't like. It's really like, if you look under the hood at like what drives a casting director to have that particular pet peeve, that's where the gold is. Because when you understand what drives casting directors, what makes them do the things they do, say the things they say, call you in or not, bring you back or not, book you or not, that's kind of looking under the hood at what it is that drives them, you know. And so that's much more powerful than understanding a specific pet peeve.
Yeah. I never asked that question,
Of course
but I
not.
was really, really happy when
When
somebody
somebody
else
else
did.
did,
And I
right?
and here's why, because I was looking for patterns. I was looking for industry-wide patterns.
Yeah.
If 9/10 of casting directors said, "Don't apologize after you've done your audition because we're not looking for somebody who isn't going to be supremely sure of their best efforts."
Mhm.
Okay, I want to listen to that. I don't care that somebody has some sort of abhorrence to, in those days, an electronic headshot rather than a paper headshot.
Mhm.
I don't care about that because I'm going to do both. It's interesting. Tim actually anticipated what you. I know that Tim has asked the builder, "What is the most attractive quality you look for in an audition?" And I will tell you that Tim is not an actor, but a presenter. He's
Mm.
done reality shows and he's done other things. And I'm wondering, HBO's done a couple of reality shows from time to time. So, but I'm wondering what that answer would be. What's the most attractive thing you
Well,
look
I think, I mean, I mostly focus on film and television auditions, right? And film and television, that's where my level of expertise is. But there is one thing that's kind of universal that would cross over into all the different, commercials, voiceovers, presenting, or whatever. And the most attractive quality in that sense would be the energy with which you show up, your presence. And this is so important to the auditioning process. There's craft, right? And you need the skills and the strategies to know how to up level your craft, how to create standout auditions that, stand out above all the other actors who are auditioning for your role, and all of that. That's 100% true. And you have to know how auditions work so they think of you as a pro on all levels. But the energy with which you show up into all of that makes a huge difference too. Because you could have the best skills in the world, but if you're tentative, if you don't have belief in yourself, if you have even limiting beliefs that you're not aware of that will kind of creep into your audition, the energy that you show up with, they feel that.
Yeah.
Even in a self-tape, it comes across. I can't tell you, like sometimes when I'm coaching my private actors group, and I will call out somebody in a kind and gentle way, of course, on something that I notice, like a little minor, subtle, like energetic shift or something, that a thought that crossed their mind. I was like, did you just check out just then? Or, I saw that you did blah, blah. And they're like, how did you know that? I'm like, I'm not psychic. It's just, I'm a student of human behavior, and most casting directors are. And even if they're not cognitively, intellectually aware of it and articulate it, they sense the energy with which you show up. And you can't be your best creative self if you're not willing to be present in the intellectual choices that you've made. It's the blend of those things that really make you stand out.
I think sometimes actors look at getting auditions as the work that we do, but a task as opposed to a joy.
Bummer.
And
Yeah.
I wonder if there might be, for those of you watching, a mantra that you say to yourself when you step away after having set up your gear and just getting into the mindset of bringing that energy that you sometimes forget about. I mean, I certainly have been guilty of sitting down in this very space, which is where I do my auditions, and going, all right, so I gotta figure this out here. Am I in focus? And not, I have to tell this patient that they have cancer.
Right.
I have to, the energy is in the performance. So it's kind of interesting that that's the case. Ask your questions in the comment below, the comment area below, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn. I want to get as many questions in this time as possible. And Tim says, thank you.
Can I address that thing that you just said, though, like task versus joy? Because
Yeah.
I think that's, I hear from a lot of actors how much they hate auditions. They hate auditioning. They hate the whole process of auditions. They hate being judged in auditions. They hate that, they can do their best work on set, but they suck in auditions and they anticipate them being bad and they just don't like the whole thing. And everything that I just said is a choice. you can choose to like auditions, you can choose to hate auditions. And I know it doesn't feel that way because sometimes you feel like, well, my feelings about auditions are my feelings about auditions, but your feelings about auditions are there because of your experience. And if
Yeah.
your experience were different because you knew how casting directors think, you knew what they expected, you knew how to deliver it, you would have so much of a different experience because it would be an even playing field. You could show up and be your best creative self because you would know how to play the game.
Yeah.
And then it is a game, and then it's fun. And that's where the joy comes in, is the confidence in knowing that you know how to deliver a pro level audition that exceeds a casting director's expectations, that surprise and delight them and make them squeal with joy because you've decided to learn what makes a pro level audition, what makes yours stand out above everyone else. Then it becomes a freaking game that you love to play. And you deserve to be able to play that game that way, because auditioning is 95% of what you do, or more sometimes.
Sure. If you want to learn more about this Thursday and Friday, as we're recording this on Monday, the 23rd of September, this Thursday and Friday at noon Pacific, both days, same, you can pick one or the other. You don't have to do both. Both days, Amy Jo is going to be leading a live training called the Castability Factor. And she is going to dive deep into all of what we're talking about here today. So visit voheroes.com/castability. It'll take you right to the registration page. We'd love to have you there. And also, I look at the whole self when it comes to being an actor, and I worry if sometimes we've managed to spend a lot of time developing our skills as an actor and in the process shooting ourselves in the foot. And here's what I mean by that. As actors, we are in a very weird world. We're in a very weird pursuit of work. We're in a very weird statement that we make to the world, to our family and to our friends, not necessarily in Los Angeles or in New York or in Atlanta, but in other spaces. If you grew up in Cleveland, you go home and they say, "Oh, what are you doing now?" And I'm an actor. Really? You know, it's like it's like a dog in those videos on Instagram, and they're constantly going back and forth. We have been told so many times that that's really special, that's really unique, and reinforced these march to a different drummer kinds of choices that we make about our life and our career. Have you seen people do that really weird choice thing in auditions and you just kind of cringe a little bit because they're trying to set themselves out? Or tell me a little bit about that moment when somebody makes a choice that just isn't right.
Well, you know, there's a lot of talk about you need to stand out in your auditions. You need to stand out. I say it all the time. People say it all the time or whatever. But they're standing out in your auditions and they're standing out with your work. They're not the same thing, although there is overlap. And when you try to stand out because you want them to remember you, you know, you're trying to stand out for the purpose of standing out. You're standing out as an amateur versus blending in as a pro, which is what you actually want to do. And you should never strive to stand out for the sake of standing out. Now, there are a zillion different ways to stand out with the work. Standing out in the way you create choices, standing out by knowing the types of patterns of mistakes that most actors make, and you making a different one can immediately make you stand out. There are so many ways to stand out with your work without going, "Look at me, I'm doing something different. Remember me. That is like amateur city. And I say that with love. Please understand, when I say the word amateur, I'm not being judgy. I want to give you the understanding of what casting directors think. And when you understand how to avoid the things like that, trying to stand out on purpose, that make them think of you as an amateur and, deliver pro level audition, the things that do that, then, you're gold. On the training, I just want you to know, like, you talked about patterns before, and I'm also quite the seeker of patterns. It's like a thing that I love to do. Mm-hmm. And what I notice is there are over the course of my career in casting, which was like the 14 years at HBO, the 20 years in total I was doing it. This is a zillion auditions. That's a real number. Zillion auditions that I did. And I noticed certain things that actors would do that we loved. I also noticed there were certain adjustments that I was giving in a room or even via notes on a self-tape that when the actor took that particular adjustment, their audition would get, it would shift into the bookable zone, as I like to call it. And so what I noticed was there are several different things, types of adjustments that casting directors will give you when you're lucky enough to get one, which is very rare now. But what I did was I took the 10 most impactful adjustments that you need to know about, that a casting director would give you if they were in the room with you and they were so inclined as to give adjustments, which they're mostly not now, by the way. And I took those, and that's literally what this training is. It's 10 casting director adjustments that working actors make to book more. And when you learn them, you can kind of adjust yourself in advance without having to worry about getting feedback or getting an adjustment, and show up into your audition as if they gave you that adjustment. And that, my friends, is power. It's a huge audition advantage. So I get excited. I can't help myself.
Listen carefully to what Amy Jo just said. What if you were about to enter the game and the coach said, okay, here are some things that you want to pay attention to. Here are some things that you really want. Like, imagine having somebody who has been through the trenches, been through the wars, and has noticed some things that you might want to remind yourself, as opposed to, God, I hope I remember every one of my lines word perfectly. I hope there are so many things that we worry about sometimes that aren't really worth worrying about. And then there are some things that we don't even think about that are worth paying attention to. Would that be fair?
So fair. Like, one of the things that I hear a lot, sometimes, and tell me if any of you guys have ever obsessed over memorizing your lines. Anybody ever obsessed over memorizing their lines? Oh my God, I've got to memorize them perfectly. And like, of course you should strive to do that. I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't strive to do that, but like, no casting director ever looked at, two really good actors and say, oh, I'm going to cast him. He's the most memorized. Like, nobody cares if you memorize. I would rather, and most casting directors would agree with me on this one, would rather see you accidentally screw up a word, but be so present and full of life and making those standout, interesting choices than be the most memorized actor ever. Like, that's a function that you have to have for when you're working on set. And of course, you want to be familiar with the material, but it's more important that you spend your prep time on the bigger levers, which are the choices that you make that will make you stand out above the other actors, and showing up into those choices with that beautiful energy of you.
Yeah. I've got a question here, and I'm not sure this is something that you were prepared to respond to. I know you don't work in the audiobook space, but I invited voiceover talent as well. Al says, when auditioning for audiobooks, and I'm going to ask you to take this from the specific to the general, because I think it's worth that, which is my main VO area. What would you listen for, and what would you suggest the narrator concentrate on presenting? Now, in the world of audiobooks, you could talk about, what people look for in terms of, creating the story and presenting the story in a particular way. But that goes from the specific to the general when it comes to on camera as well. Because someone could easily say there, do you care about them understanding the role? Do you care about them understanding their scene partners? Do you care about them understanding the plot? Do you care about them understanding bringing correct props, if at all? It's like, there's so many things that we could focus on. What do you say people should focus on most importantly?
Oh, this is a toughie. And that's why there's like 10 of these adjustments in the training I'm doing and not one. Because it's really hard to pick. But, if I had to pick one, and this would be for film and television on camera, because I can't really speak to audition,
I will, and when you're done, but a little bit. Yeah.
But and because maybe there's a parallel in audiobook space. Like, when you get an audition, you have to know what your character's goal is in the scene. And what I often will see is either actors that haven't actually asked themselves that question, or have given themselves a very general answer, or an answer that's, my character wants to be seen and heard, or something that would make more sense for the whole project, versus what does my character want to achieve in this scene that if they could achieve it, the scene could be over. And when you find this uber specific laser focused goal for your character, the thing that if they were to achieve it, if they could achieve it within the scene could literally end. Then you have an opportunity to create a really interesting through line. Then every choice you make bounces off of that goal, and they're all working in unison together to get you to that thing. And then what you have, and then when you learn how to create transitions from each one of those things to the next thing, then the casting director's on the edge of their seat, even though they know what the outcome of the scene is. But when you have made those choices by creating that laser focused goal, making really specific choices, connecting them together with very specific transitions, whoa, that is like a real head turner. And that's like something that will make them notice you, but in the best possible way.
Yeah. And this is gold because, and it shows up in a number of different ways. First of all, like Amy Jo was describing, the casting director is leaning in. You know, it's what we used to call in radio a driveway moment, because you'd pull up to your house and you'd be listening to the radio and you'd sit there in the driveway until whatever was happening was done, that your favorite song was finished, or the conversation they were having with a caller was finished. And I can always tell when somebody has achieved these things in the world of voiceover and audiobooks when I am just sucked in, when they've got me sitting there going, well, who was the killer? What did they do? How did they do it? What's behind the door? You know, when you've got an open loop at the end of a chapter, when you're doing an audiobook narration, hopefully they let you do that. They let you get to the point where the scene or the narration that you're providing has an open loop at the end. He opened the door and could not believe what he saw. And it's like, what was it? What was behind the door? You know, it's like you have moved from, I'm going to do this in a deeper voice than normal. You've moved to, I'm going to make sure people know that the killer is behind the door, or whatever. You are absolutely fulfilling that. What could you do to make people understand that if that goal was achieved, we could move on? The scene is over, we go to the next scene. That's so beautiful, so brilliant. Thank you so much for that.
And you know what's really interesting is this type of thing actually applies. We all experience this in real life. Like, if you've ever watched, have any of you ever watched a movie more than once? Your favorite movie, your thing that you watch over and over again, or you binged a series multiple times, right? We've all done that, and we know how it ends. But when it's really well done, you're still hoping that they don't die at the end. You're still hoping that they get the girl. You're still like, maybe this time they're not going to screw it up. Oh, they did it. Because it's so good and they're so committed and they're so specific and it's so well done that it draws you in every time. That's what you need to create in the audition in order for a casting director to go, I want you. Yes.
Yeah. And there are people that are talking about, okay, me versus somebody else. Dragon Girl says, what's the difference between two newer actors at the same basic talent level auditioning for the same role? Actor number one books the co-star, actor number two books the guest star. Do we worry too much about the leveling of our roles as opposed to, you know, and progressing forward? It feels like, you know, oh, you know, we have a walk-on. Oh, we have a co-star. Oh, we have a guest star. Do we worry about that stuff too much? I do want to know what you think the answer is, but I also want to, yeah.
You do worry about it. Most actors worry about it too much, but I'm going to qualify that. And they worry about it too much at the wrong time in their career. You know, that there are stages to your career. You know, I think that one of the biggest problems in this is that there's a lot of, you know, kind of get famous fast formula sort of people out there, people perpetuating this, you know, just add water and stir instant acting career success thing. And that's not the way acting works. Acting is a profession that takes time. It's a profession that takes time. And that's a good thing, because the time that it takes you to progress is the time that it takes you to learn about the business, to learn how to deliver on set and in auditions, to give you the confidence to know that you know what you're doing, to give you time to accumulate credits and experience on set. Time is actually a good thing, and you think it's your enemy. So the answer is yes, you worry about it too much at the wrong times. There are times to, I wouldn't say worry, but to focus on making a level jump and progressing your acting career. And like when you're newer is not one of those times. When you're newer, the things to focus on are learning how the business works, so that people, even though you're new, don't think of you as an amateur. And yes, that is an easy thing to do, because casting directors don't cast you based on the amount of credits you have. They cast you based on so many other things. And, to learn when you've accumulated enough co-star credits where it's like, okay, enough already, and you feel like you just can't do it anymore. There's a moment and there's other kind of criteria that you can examine to go, is this the time for me to make a level jump, to break out of co-star jail, to do something different in order to get those different results? And that's a whole strategy and a whole other thing. And we could talk about that another day. But to worry about that, in the moment where you haven't even booked a role yet, or you don't have, a good solid, collection of footage on yourself yet, you're focusing on the wrong things. And therefore that is a form of self-sabotage.
Yeah. Yeah. That whole notion of, what you called co-star jail. I just get so cringy about that, because it's like, how about enjoying where you are, what you're doing, the process, the joy of being an actor, whether it's co-star or guest star, series regular, series recurring, how about enjoying that moment and moving and using that to move forward, however your stuff shows up, however your journey occurs. I mean, I remember seeing Samuel L. Jackson on David Letterman. David Letterman goes, "You were just like an overnight success, weren't you?" And he goes, "Yeah, 15 years as an overnight success,
Right.
if that's what you want to call it." General question, how does one move from amateur to pro? And let me drill down a little bit on that. How will the rules change as you move not only from amateur to pro, but from pro at one level, maybe co-stars most of the time, to guest stars, etc.? What would you share with that?
One moves from amateur to pro to begin with by learning what the expectations from a casting point of view are for pro, what they look for in an audition. So when you understand what those things are, you can move like that from amateur to pro. It's not about credit accumulation. It's about understanding what expectations are and knowing how to meet them. And that can be very fast. So it has nothing to do with credits. And that's why, like, even asking the question that way makes me, think that you think what a lot of actors do, like, oh, over time, I will change from an amateur to pro. That may be true in some other types of parts of the business, but specifically with auditions, you can be thought of as a pro, even as a beginner, by the way that you audition, by the skills and strategies that you apply to your auditions, by knowing how to meet casting director expectations, by being able to deliver those choices, by having that unique specific goal and understanding how to find all the different transitions, all the things, right? And like all the adjustments that I'm going to share on the Castability Factor training, plus all the other ones, right? That can happen very quickly. So it has nothing to do with anything else.
And very unexpectedly too, right? Like, if I look back at my own personal experience, I was approached by an agent, as opposed to me going and looking for an agent. And I blurted out, "I'm not ready for an agent yet." And he had to disabuse me of that notion. "Oh, no, you are. And I want to do that." And I'm still with him to this day. And then that moment when you're like, "Oh, I have to do an awful lot of hard work before I ever get my big break." And for me, it was June 8th, 2008. And all of a sudden, I went from having no credits to being a series recurring character on Heroes.
Yeah.
And I didn't expect that. I didn't think that was going to happen. That wasn't on my bingo card, nor was it something I was prepared to walk through in terms of a procedure. Can you talk kind of how this business is filled with lovely surprises that we may not be expecting?
I actually want to go back to something you said, and then I'll lead my way there.
Sure.
Because you talked about the big break, and I hate the big break, because I think a lot of actors.
I love it, but
No,
go ahead. You hate it.
I'm glad you loved having the big break. What I'm
Yeah.
talking about is the idea of the big break. And a lot of actors will get stuck on, this is going to be my big break, or will that be my, and you put so much importance on any one audition, anticipating what the big break will be. But what the big break actually is a series of steps that happen before that thing that cause that one thing to become your big break. The big break doesn't happen dropping out of the sky like a lightning bolt, like all of a sudden, here's your big break. The big break happens from a lot of simple disciplines repeated over time, because you understand how the business works and you have the discipline to create a practice of working on your craft, whether you're auditioning or not, whether you're in class or not. You want to work on your mindset, whether you're working with somebody or not. You do all these things, and then the big break shows up magically. Oh my God, I got my big break, right? But it never, and tell me if this is true, it never comes the way you think it's going to come. Right. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's a good thing, because what happens is when you get the idea of, oh, this one is the big one, I know this is the one that's going to, then you create attachment to the outcome. Then when it doesn't happen that way, you go down that rabbit hole of despair and self-doubt. Like, oh my God, I thought this was going to be the one. It's because you were trying to arbitrarily tell the universe or whatever the heck you believe in, this is going to be the big break. But the big break will always surprise and delight you when you take the disciplined actions repeated over time that pro working actors take.
Yeah. Awesome.
Which is what you did, which is why it came.
And to be fair, you can't predict what you're going to be good at. You can't predict what you're going to be successful at. And those are two different things, being good at something and being successful at something. And I wonder, again, go to voheroes.com/castability. You'll hear a lot more about the top 10 things that Amy Jo has for you in terms of this. Can you talk a little bit about how to and how difficult it might be for us as actors who want to have a living, build a business, not do it on the side as a side hustle while we're being an attorney or a doctor, although that's fine too. But how do you disconnect the outcome from the pursuit? Like, we always think that a successful audition must be when we book it. And I'm wondering how you look at that sort of thing.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to dive into this a lot on the training, so I hope you guys are coming, but let's talk a little bit about it now. So the way to shift is from outcome to outcome focused. Number one is to be present and be in the process. And, something else I want to just tap back to that you talked about is, I don't remember what context, about enjoying the acting, like that every audition is an opportunity to act. Even like you were talking about a co-star role, like, oh, that's just one line. Yes, it's one fabulous line. You get to be on set and show up into that. You have a beginning, a middle, and an end, even with your one line. You have all those things, right? And every audition is an opportunity to channel that beautiful spirit that you have as an actor, to embody a character, to fill it up, to show up and play. Just like with an artist, they can just start sketching, and it doesn't have to go hanging in a museum for them to have experience the creation process of art, right? And so you all have that opportunity to do that. And the way sometimes it gets in your way when you focus on the outcome and you think of, yes, the outcome is a booking. That's one type of outcome, right? But so there's two parts to this. Number one, get out of the outcome entirely and focus on the process and the joy of being able to breathe life into a character, even if it's just for an audition. So that's one thing. Let's put that over here for now and talk about outcome. So outcome, booking is an outcome, feedback is an outcome, a callback is an outcome, knowing you kicked ass in your audition is an outcome. Okay, feeling like a total audition rock star because you knew how to deliver a pro audition is an outcome. And getting on casting directors' private lists and getting called in for things directly is an outcome, a really yummy, delicious outcome that will come when you do all those things. So a booking is great. We love bookings. Bookings are fabulous. But your actual job at an audition is to create that lean in, make a casting director go, ooh, what a pro. Because that right there is the gift that keeps on giving. When a casting director thinks of you that way, that's when they want to put you on their list and call you in for things without a breakdown going out, or have you in for their sessions, or bring you straight into producers, or call you in for all their stuff going on. That's when you you create leverage and you turn one audition into dozens of auditions. That is the sweet spot. So a booking is awesome, but if you focus on the booking, then what happens is when you don't book, you give yourself the opportunity to feel like crap and to beat yourself up and to have self-doubt and wonder and all those things that you all do to torture yourselves. And that is a choice. And you also have the choice to look at the audition itself as an opportunity to show up and be your best creative self and basically to book the casting director. And that is your actual goal in an audition, to have so much joy, to breathe life into the character, to enjoy the process of creating, and to hook the casting director on you for all their projects moving forward. That is the sweet spot that creates careers versus a one-hit wonder booking.
Yeah. We've got some limited time with Amy Jo today. We're going to have about 20 more minutes. So I want you to make sure that you get your comments in, get your questions in. Don't wait until we've answered somebody else's question for you to type your question in the comments below or to give us your feedback. Get your questions in now so I can get them in before the top of the hour. But if you want to spend some more time with Amy Jo Berman live, yes. I urge you to jump over to voheroes.com/castability. You can keep this running in one tab on your browser, and you can open up another tab and go to that. It's in the description on any of the channels that you're watching this on, so you can actually click on the link from the description and register for her free training coming up this Friday. There will not be a replay. If you want to replay, it costs money. And I love this because I want people to show up and get this training in a way that really helps them do all of the things that we've been talking about, dissociating the outcome with the process, not focusing on the wrong things versus the things that might help you do a lot better job with your auditions and the process of that auditions. And I want to kind of bring up something that happened to me just last year. The outcome was not the outcome. I say plot twists are just plot twists until they happen at the end. Then it's the finale. But in the meantime, I auditioned for a show on Apple TV Plus and didn't hear anything for 3 months. And then all of a sudden, I got a call from my agent saying, "Are you available tomorrow? They want you on set tomorrow." And so, yeah, you could have looked at it as hurry up and wait. But then I got the script. And the script had the actor's name that I replaced on the cover page. And so was that an outcome that I could have expected? No, but I got to spend the whole day on set with one of my heroes, the lead guest actor who was a celebrity. It was just a joy. And it's like one more moment of weirdness in a great way that this business is about. Go for it, Amy. I see your face.
As a former casting director, I've done that a zillion times, where we've had to replace somebody for various reasons. Sometimes, it's just a technical thing. Something happens and their deal falls through or whatever. And sometimes it just doesn't work out or whatever. And there are some pretty famous shows that I've worked on where people who you've fallen in love with on the series were not the actor that got the part the first time for various reasons. Like if you look at like Game of Thrones, what's her name? Beautiful actress who played Dany, Daenerys.
Oh, Emily. Sorry.
Why can I'm completely blanking, but she wasn't the original one that was cast in that role.
Sure.
And, and then also the actress who played the Stark wife. Oh my God, I'm having one of those moments. She wasn't the original. She was actually cast in another role and we lost that person. And so we kind of bumped her up to that big role of Catelyn Stark. So Michelle, I can't remember her last name. Emilia Clarke, thank you for the Daenerys role. Anyway, this kind of thing happens all the time is my point. That sort of thing, those surprise breaks that you get. And you cannot, just because you didn't get the part, it doesn't mean they didn't love you. It means that they were putting together the pieces of their puzzle and it all turned out one way. And then they lost a puzzle piece. And guess what? They liked you all along. That's
Yeah.
what happens when you know how to show up into an audition the right way. And, I
I
just want to go back and speak to something you said about like why my training is live and not there's no replay.
mhm.
Because I told you before, I like, we both are students of patterns and you look for patterns of things. What I noticed is that the actors who got the best results from attending, my trainings were not people who watched it on the replay. I noticed that the actors who would always contact me back and go, oh my God, I booked something because of this. I tried something that I learned on your training or from your class. They were the ones that attended live, and, patterns speak volumes to me. So I like to reverse engineer things to make sure that they work in their best possible way. And so I know you're going to get the most out of it when you show up live. I'm showing up live. So show up live. And that's why we do it that way, because of the impact. And the other thing is everything you're learning on the Castability Factor training, the 10 audition adjustments that you're going to get, everything from that training is actually pulled out of my signature course, Audition Rockstar Academy, which is a paid, course that you can only access at certain times or whatever. Like, I pulled stuff out of there to put together this free training because I wanted to be able to give you something that will make an impact right away.
Yep.
And so, and then, so anyway, so there's reasons why I do things that I do. It's reasons why it's free. There's reasons why there's no replay. And the reasons all benefit you.
Yeah. I think sometimes we get into this pattern of asking sort of trigger questions like, oh, if I'm going to sign up for this kind of training, is there going to be a replay? You don't have to ask that question. You could just choose to register and do something great for yourself and not worry if there's going to be a replay. Go, take action, do something. Geez, I am about to reveal on screen my brand new favorite comment ever made, ever, in anything that I've done. Sarah, I'm your biggest fan right now. Listen to this. That makes me want to be the puzzle piece.
Yes, be the puzzle piece. Oh my God, I'm totally going to use that.
It's like we sit there and we think to ourselves, I've got to make sure they understand that I can play a character that is this age, or I want to make sure that the pre-build that I've mistakenly made for this scene where I arch my eyebrow on the word the isn't our priority. Our priority is to solve the problem that our client has. Our client is the casting person. They're looking for you to walk through the room as the solution to their problem. The scene that they're trying to end is casting or helping to cast this particular role and all the other roles. And when you are the puzzle piece, oh my gosh, think about you putting that last puzzle piece in on a puzzle that you're doing and you put it in, and it's like, yes. So
that's how casting feels, like casting directors they're problem solving every day by trying to put together that puzzle. That's what they do. And, the thing about a puzzle, a regular puzzle that's different than a casting puzzle, is that a regular puzzle, the pieces don't change shape and move around. But with a casting puzzle, the pieces are constantly changing shape and moving around, meaning once you put some people in a cast, then the whole puzzle kind of shifts a little bit and the puzzle pieces change, and the piece you need to put in now might be a little bit different than the piece you needed before you added that other cast member. Like, just, to go back to the Game of Thrones thing, when we were casting the pilot for that, for example, every time we added a new family member to the Stark family, everything shifted a little bit. It's like, okay, could they look like they both came from these two parents? Does he look not like he came from, like when we were casting Jon Snow, we wanted to make sure he looks a little different than everybody else, or that people who came from the Targaryens all had that kind of different look, or, whatever. Like, and so every time we would put another cast member in, we would have to readjust and go, well, oh, we really liked this person, but now they don't fit. But this one, who we also really liked, now does fit. And so it's constantly that readjustment.
Yeah, it's great. I love the notion of the sort of cascading actions that could occur when you have to make a change or when you want to make a change. And it's not like casting directors are doing this in a vacuum. They're doing it with the producers and the directors and the writers of the show. And so all these moving parts are happening. Where's the one that I just wanted to, here we go. Show. Amy, Jo, any advice for cold reading auditions? That moment when you go in for one audition and they go, I love that, but hang on one second, rummage, rummage, rummage. Go out in the hall, take 5 or 10 minutes, and then come back in. I want you to read for this, maybe for an entirely different project.
Right. And so, that it doesn't happen as often as it used to because in-person auditions aren't as common as they used to.
Right.
And, usually what would happen is like when that was the case and we'd hand somebody something else, just know that a casting director doesn't expect you to be like, okay, I'll do it right here. Icy, icy cold. That you get the opportunity to say, great, I'm going to take 15 minutes out in the hall and I'll be back. Versus, oh my God, can I have a little time? Is it okay if I, blah, blah, blah? It's your audition when they throw something cold at you, unless, you have to learn how to read the room a little bit too. But you get to say, I'm going to take a few minutes and go out and work on this. Now, in that time, when you have a short amount of time, this is where you really lean into pro level skills. Okay. Because things like learning how to identify audition traps, finding, fixing, flipping them into an advantage, that is a skill that when you learn how to do it, can happen, you can do very quickly. Or like what I was talking about before, when you learn how to identify that laser focused goal, when you have very little time, if you find the goal, you find the transitions, you find the traps, you can do that very quickly as you practice this type of a skill. And then it's not cold to you, right? It's like once you identify those things, then you just have to embody the character and go after it with the lines in your hand. Okay. And so that's that, again, that unique. And this is why a successful acting career really happens on 3 levels. It's the mindset part, the business part, and the craft part. And they all have to be working in unison, because when you have the business part and you understand how the business works, you're not thrown off by something like that. When you have the mindset piece in place, that you can show up into it and do your best and be fully present, come what may. And when you have the craft, you know that you have the strategies and the skills, and you know which ones to apply very quickly that are going to have the greatest impact in the shortest amount of time.
Yeah.
This is how you become a pro.
Yeah. I want to make sure that you caught something that was kind of like persistent all throughout what you said. And you mentioned a specific instance of that. There's a big difference between asking for permission and making a statement of course, meaning, do you mind if I step out in the hall and just like go over this for 5 or 10 minutes? Like asking that permission, or do you mind if I sit, or do you mind if I hit my walk in and hit my mark? As opposed to either just doing it, or if you need to, saying you're going to do it. I'm just going to step out in the hall for a few minutes and just take a look at this. That makes so much difference to somebody who wants to hire you, somebody who wants to be in partnership with you. They can rely on the fact that you're sure of yourself, as opposed to constantly asking for permission. Would you say that that's one of the biggest mistakes that actors make?
Well, I think it's not the asking for permission that's the issue. I think it's the energy with which they ask. That's the permission. Because
Okay.
you can say, mind if I step out in the hallway for a minute? Versus, do you mind if I just, because I just want to go work on it?
But
Those are both
that seems to
asking
be
for
like
permission.
that's like a different way of making a statement, though.
Yes.
Yeah,
But
it's
that's
great.
it is. It's really, it's saying I'm going to do this, but putting it in question form. If you feel more comfortable doing that, do that. But that is another form of asking for permission. So it's not just about but the energy is I'm doing this because this is my audition and I know that.
Yeah.
And that provides them confidence, because when you think about it, if they are no casting director ever wants to get that hellish phone call from the producer on set going, why did you send them here? Oh my God, they're making us late. They're costing us money, right? Because what if you get on set and you don't have that kind of confidence and they throw a curveball at you? The director gives you, or the producer gives you a thing, or the studio comes down and says, yeah, we want you to do it this, whatever it is. They're going to throw curveballs at you. And if you can't handle it in an audition, how are you going to handle it on set with all the cameras at you and the rest of the cast there and the whole crew staring at you?
Sure.
And then looking at their watch, TikTok, money, right? So the audition is like a little microcosm of what they can expect from you on set, which is why the confidence piece is so important.
I've heard various numbers batted about how much money it costs per minute to shoot television and film,
Yeah.
and it's tens of thousands, in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars for certain types of work. And we sometimes don't realize just how much responsibility we have on it. You know, if we get what we want, if we get what we're looking for, and what we're going to need to bring to the table to actually do it more than once. I want you to go to voheroes.com/castability. These trainings are called the Castability Factor. There's one each day on Thursday and Friday this week. Again, we're doing this live. If you're watching my replay of this and you're asking questions, be sure to tag me and Amy in the Amy Jo in the. You gave me permission a long time ago to say Amy if I wanted to, so I'm just not
Yes.
going to stop beating myself up over that.
Okay, please
Um,
do.
yeah. So last chance, we have like 5 minutes. I want to make sure that you get your question in if you can, and if there's a whole flurry of questions, I'm only going to take the ones that I can. If people have any sort of hesitancy about actually getting better at the audition process, have you seen that before? Have you seen people who are comfortable struggling?
Yes, it's really an odd phenomenon that it's sort of like wearing struggle as a badge of honor. It's like, because a lot of times what happens is we hear out there in the zeitgeist of, actors like acting that, that you have to struggle. It's like part of the process is struggle. And when you wear struggle as a badge of honor, what you don't realize is, number one, it becomes harder and harder to let it go. And number two, it creeps into your work.
Mhm.
And the thing is, in my opinion, you don't have to struggle to succeed. And that doesn't mean, when we're not talking about outcome, I'm not saying that every audition you ever go on, you're going to book. That is not what I'm saying. Struggle is a mindset, right? You can do two of the exact, one activity two different ways, and one way you struggle through it and another way you work your way through it, and both things maybe are the same activity, but the way you move through it is different. And when you're like, when you self-identify as a struggling actor, first of all, if any of you have ever done that, I'm going to invite you to let that go and to shift out of the mentality of struggling actor, because if you embody struggling actor, guess what? You're inviting struggle into your life and into your acting career, and you will struggle. You're going to experience struggle, and that's totally not necessary. You can work through obstacles and enjoy the out of it, right? Or you can struggle through them. Which do you want to do? So yeah, struggle gets in your way, and it absolutely doesn't have to.
Yeah. I find that, it happens in all parts of our lives. Like when I see somebody who's usually an older person saying, oh, yeah, my confuser, I'm a tech Luddite, well, you're just giving yourself permission to remain that way as well when you keep reinforcing it by saying it.
It could be, I'm in the process of learning how to be great with tech.
Yeah.
I'm learning tech. In the
Yeah,
past, I wasn't
exactly.
good with tech, but now I'm learning how to be good at it. That doesn't mean you're good at it now. But if you're like, I suck at tech, guess what? You suck at tech.
Yeah. And I think the answer to June's question, you're saying, is struggling a choice.
100%.
Yeah, because it's what you know. And we're often more comfortable with the rules of what we know rather than that unknown, oh, I could be confident, but I don't know how to be confident and be happy being confident. All of these things are things that are going to orbit what Amy Jo has to share with you this Thursday and Friday. Go to voheroes.com/castability. One last question. Corey from up in Canada. She says, any tips on how to improve confidence? And I'm wondering if there are levels of expertise in terms of confidence, or if it's just switching from uncertainty to confidence,
It depends. Everybody has their own process. I've seen people become more confident over time, and I've seen people decide to embody confidence, and it's like a switch got flipped. And there's no there's no way to know which one you are or what's going to work for you. And and also like thinking about, well, then if I can't become confident in 5 minutes, then I suck or something's wrong with me, whatever. So it's not about the result of confidence. It's about improving the process of being present. And so in terms of how to improve confidence, twofold answer. Number one, practice being present and mindfulness and all those kinds of woo-woo mindset things, which I have a whole other training on that. We can talk about that another day. But in terms of auditions, the other way to improve your confidence is to learn how casting directors think, learn what's expected of you, learn what they think of as, oh, you're a pro, and then how to do those things. And by doing that, you will automatically become more confident because you know. And you know that feeling of when you know something, right? When you know something, you just show up a little bit differently, or sometimes a lot differently. So, that's probably, while I believe you should work on both your mindset and your audition skills, the mindset thing is a bit of a slower burn, but something that's so important. But the audition skill thing, you could learn one little thing that could absolutely make you stand out in a way that you never had before very quickly when you learn what casting directors expect and how to deliver it.
Yeah. And as I said, I've invited not only on-camera actors, but also voiceover actors. And this question from Keith Copeland, the advice concerning confidence and energy is golden. How does this advice for live acting auditions apply to remote voiceover auditions? I would extend that out to life.
Self-tapes.
To what? To self-tapes?
To
Everything.
self-tapes. Yeah, on camera. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, being audacious and choosing confidence over choosing waffling or uncertainty or giving in to the fear of failure, it's a moment where you make the decision. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this like a badass pro. And having that choice made, it doesn't matter what pursuit you're doing when it comes to performance. It doesn't matter whether you're doing commercials. I mean, there's a whole set of tiny little things that commercial casting people have that are different from series casting people or from voiceover casting people, and things that you can do in a commercial audition, like buttons, that you can't do in other areas. So I think it's just a choice, and I think it maps perfectly between on camera and voice, whether remote or recorded. So Amy, Jo, I can't thank you enough for everything. Everybody else is thanking us in the chat, you in particular. And I really would like to make sure that if you haven't signed up for it yet, do it now. The link is clickable in the description, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn. Click on the link. Go register. It's absolutely free. I've made sure you have a ticket waiting for you. And no, there's not going to be a recording unless you want to pay for it. So go and sign up now and enjoy. You don't get this kind of deep experience shared in your direction on a regular basis. So for all those nimrods online on the social networks who are saying, I can teach you how to be an actor in 7 days, it's not that hard, go visit Amy Jo and have her give you the straight skinny. Thank you, Amy Jo. I so appreciate it.
Thanks for having me here. And thanks you guys for your great questions. And I'm hoping to see a whole lot of you on the Castability Factor training later this week.
VOHeroes.com/castability. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you later.